Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. I have a couple of interesting things to share today. So I used to build electric bikes. So I was part of a team which built something called the Copenhagen Wheel. It's a project started at a lab at MIT and then it became a startup and a very interesting kind of concept. I also used to study how Wikipedia worked. So for those of you who have contributed to Wikipedia or at least read articles on any topic on Wikipedia, you'll be, of course, familiar with the breadth of topics which the encyclopedia covers. It's also somewhat surprising that a system which is so open, I mean, you can go today and change the article on any particular topic just using an edit button on the top of the page. You can change any article and it's basically as simple as essentially writing in a Word document. I was very intrigued by how this system actually manages to create high quality output. How are articles really not so susceptible to vandalism? How are they still quite reliable actually if you look at most articles? So this is what I studied and I used something called network theory. I used essentially graphs, mathematics to figure out the real truth behind how people communicate, how they interact. So the dots you see on the page below, before me are actually the articles and users. And every single connection between them is an edit made to the article. So I essentially grew Wikipedia in 6 different languages which had been edited by thousands of users. And what was surprising was actually what I found, that there are certain golden rules with which quality is created when people interact. First of all, individuals don't create quality. Interactions between individuals of a very diverse background create quality. An expert in a field does not alone create any kind of valuable content. It's always an expert coupled with some amateurs, coupled with newcomers to the field, which are actually responsible for creating things which are most valued. I think we'll cover innovation as I think part of our sessions today because it is the classic example of going beyond what is conformity. But what I found surprising is that in Wikipedia I could, using data, more or less prove what are the systems, what are the interaction processes which yield quality. Now of course this is the kind of stuff that gets you a PhD. So I got a PhD. My wife was especially happy that I finally could move on to a real job. So I did a real job. I worked in consulting for a while and I learned how big businesses work, how decisions are taken in a boardroom. I learned how to make Excel sheets and draw brilliant boxes in PowerPoint. But it was fun and I really respect the work of many people who are today, I think even in this room, many of them exist, who are responsible for many amazing initiatives in different organizations which are happening today. So it was fun, I learned a lot, but I also wanted to do something on my own. So some doctor and engineer friends of mine, 4 of us actually, came together and formed a company called Biosense. So this is a medical device company. We are passionate about making medical devices affordable. So we started making something called TouchBee. We invented a device called TouchBee. It's a non-invasive anemia screening tool. Anemia is a big problem in India and many parts of the developing world. So this particular machine actually can use something called photoplethysmography. It's a kind of optics to measure the content of hemoglobin, oxygen, heart rate and temperature. Basically, and especially the HB part, which is bold, that's the most important part for diagnosing and monitoring anemia. That's how we started. And vaguely, we knew these 2 big words. This is what we vaguely wanted to do, democratize healthcare. I don't exactly know what this means. But I have a sort of an inkling what this could be. I'll give you an example of this. Is some of our recent work. So we started out 4 years ago. We have a 15-member team now working in Bombay and sales in different parts of India. But this is what a typical example of what we think like, how we think like. This is a machine. It's something called an automated urine analyzer. Self-descriptive. It is a machine to analyze urine. Urine tests, blood tests, these are the bedrocks of modern pathology. This is how you diagnose what's wrong with you, or what's not, hopefully. So this machine costs $2,000. It was primarily, you can see, you can guess by the LCD that it's an electronic machine. Most of its building blocks were built in the 1980s. R&D mostly in Europe and in some US locations. So this is that same kind of technology which a young India today depends on for most of its pathology lab needs. What we found surprising is, of course, that for specific problems in India, problems of pathology as well as problems of economics, not being able to afford $2,000 machine, or problems of human resource, that not having technicians or doctor to really use these kind of machines. No major significant domestic indigenous innovation has actually come up. So we were sort of looking at this, and it's nice. It works with a test strip. So you would have a test strip with different chemical pads on it. Each chemical pad actually changes color slightly depending on presence or absence or quantitative kind of assessment of what is the glucose, bilirubin, different ketones, different parameters you want to measure from a pathology point of view. So we asked, with a collaboration with IIT Bombay, our team of doctors, designers, and engineers came together and asked ourselves this question. I think I'm at IIM Ranchi, at like any IIM, 90% of you guys are engineers. So maybe this is the kind of questions you should also ask yourselves. We asked ourselves the questions: what is the best way to build an advanced electronic device that has high quality imaging, data processing, communication, and interfacing capabilities? Because essentially these are the things which were there in the $2,000 machine which was imported. How could we reinvent diagnostic equipment like that? And the answer to this question, by the way, is in everybody's pocket today. Yeah, you got it. It is a phone. So we used the power of smartphones to reinvent that machine. Here's how it works. So the test sample is taken as usual. It's a urine sample or a blood sample. You would have the reagent strip dipped in it. There is a software which works on an Android platform. It's going to do imaging of all 14, in this case a 10 parameter strip, and the results come up on screen. So glucose, bilirubin, and so forth. There's different parameters. You can save them, print them, and do everything that that machine can do and more. So what we realize is that the smartphone in general is something which is not only a processing device, but it's a communication device. So not only could we compare in accuracy to the old device, we could also do more things. So this is how the test looks like, this is how the result looks like. But if you see the button below, save, and then below that, the side of that, share. What that does is takes patient's results in a pathology lab, in a field setting, wherever the patient is, and it makes them suddenly now shareable across different databases. You can share it to the cloud, you can share it to your own clinic's system, you can share it to your own personal database. So this is a kind of trend of this Iron Man friend, sort of fans here, Tony Stark's data. Anyway, so you can now suddenly make more and more use of data. All our clients' data is now hosted on the cloud, on the internet. So all of this data from different parts of India goes to the cloud, and suddenly you can make very, very powerful decisions which are backed by data, which are not ad hoc decisions. So now, for example, this is one of our clients who has testing facilities in multiple parts of Maharashtra. All of their clinic data is, of course, used for clinical decision making on the ground at the point of care. But at the same time, all of that data comes to head office in Bombay, and their decision makers there can take calls on where to deploy resources, where to send extra units, where to invest more, are those investments working, where to improve skill sets, where is actually the need, various things on a very real-time basis. All of this data is coming to them via the web on their own browser in their office in Bombay. So this is fun stuff, and it's something which is really changing, I believe. The whole mobile and internet paradigm is changing the way even healthcare works. In our case, we have been able to deploy these kind of units in places where otherwise conventional medicine or conventional diagnostics are find very difficult to reach. So some of these machines are just carried on a bike slightly better than this one. but maybe less beautiful than this one. And they go out into the field, hold camps, warn people who need treatment, put them back, take them into the system for treatment. So all of this is possible now when you take healthcare to people and don't depend on the same kind of systems which have been sort of centralized testing systems which have come up in mostly in Europe and US, and expect them to work straight away in India. This is all interesting stuff. So like I said, data is amazing. Once you have it on a platform, you can do n number of things with it. This is the UCheck kit. We have had a lot of fun making it, building it, manufacturing it, and selling it to different customers across India. And again, very proud to say it's all made in India, made in Thane. So that's Biosense. We do a lot of interesting stuff. Any of you who are sort of geeks and medicine kind of people who can visit us whenever you're there. That's it. Okay, that's the Biosense story, and there's a bunch of other projects I do which are linked to Biosense or outside Biosense. In general, I'd like to talk to you about the second thing I promised. I believe that there's a fundamental change in the way things are being made today. If I look back on what we have done and keep doing today, I often ask myself the question, how is it possible at all? Why don't I need a $1 billion R&D lab? Why is it that a person with a laptop and some crazy idea can suddenly go out and start doing things? And by the way, I'm not alone. I know many fellow entrepreneurs, scientists, researchers who are all doing fantastic work all across India. I can name so many names, and I'm sure you have heard of and seen and met, or you are actually in this audience, I'm sure. People who are doing extremely amazing things. And there's a lot of things which are becoming possible today which are not, and especially in hardware. And I believe that this is one of the things which is changing the game, basically. This is how we make things at Biosense. There's a design. I've given a very simple design of a nut and bolt. Design is made. This is an idea. An idea is translated into a software. So you can draw it. You can draw it and describe it, and you can essentially make it as detailed as possible in a software, right? The software is often on the cloud, so you don't even need to pay a huge amount of money upfront for it. You can pay per use. Or it's often free. It's open source. So in this 3D modeling software, I have modeled a nut and bolt. And there are a set of very magical steps which are used to be, a lot of time used to be taken to convert this into a physical thing, an idea converted into a thing. Today, this process of converting an idea into a thing is fundamentally changed. It has fundamentally changed. It's what is really completely disrupting, I think, the R&D or prototyping kind of stage. So this is a video of how things are done today. Okay, a few objects which are being grown, printed, you'll see. This is a 3D printer. I don't know if any of you have seen, used, or heard of sort of 3D printing. This is a printer of a company called KC Bots, which I am advising in their commercialization. But you'll see that this is layer by layer by layer, an object is grown. There's a computer model of it, and it's generated by an innovator. Anybody who has an idea can learn how to use it and just sort of almost like drawing, essentially make the object in a software. And the machine uses different types of plastic right now to print it layer by layer by layer by layer. So here's something being printed. So I don't know if you can guess. Anybody has a quick guess? Who's this? Walter White. I heard. It's Walter White's face from Breaking Bad. Okay, so this is all fun stuff. So I mean, we bought a couple of these units like a couple of years ago, the printers. Now these kind of machines are available from companies like KC Bots and others for like less than 50,000 rupees. Imagine this, it's as cheap as many computers or mobile phones. And initially it might seem, I mean, what is really the use of these apart from say a small lab? But I'm sure there are a few very, very, very interesting possibilities going to happen. I mean, this is just a few visuals of how the process unfolds, how the actual objects are made. So this is a bridge, by the way. It's a sort of a truss bridge which is printed to demonstrate, you can analyze stresses, you can do look and feel, you can do a lot of things once you have a physical object in front of you. In fact, I have like just for the sake of illustration bought a couple of these kind of plastic prints. This is a house layout and this is a spanner. So an idea which occurred to me when the previous speaker, gentleman who was here, Vastu Shastra and all that. And I'm sure architects are now starting to use 3D prints of their design and consulting their clients, is this the kind of layout you want, and so forth. So it's a fundamental shift in the way things are being done. It's quite amazing. In this, if you are plugged into this world, I think it's going to really change the way, fundamentally change the way we think about making things. The same shift that has happened because of mobile and internet in the last 2 decades, which has changed the way, to a large extent, how we think, how we communicate with others, and even how we share with people like our friends, our co-workers. All of that has been disrupted in a large way by the internet. I believe that the next couple of decades are going to be about how we can really translate many of our outputs of our collaborations, outputs of our relationships, outputs of our innovative thought process into real tangible products. And I'll work it very narrowly, products, because that is what India is lacking. I believe that IIMs especially, and NIDs and IITs have not generated enough product companies, have not generated enough value. And it's up to this generation, I think, there's the right mix, there's the right confluence of, there's the perfect storm basically in terms of internet, your skill set, and the problems all around you in India to suddenly start thinking very creatively and very profitably, if you're up to it, and generate value. This is the decade of innovation. Let's make it the decade of India. Thank you very much.